Like Instagram was lagging behind there, but we're good now. All right. My favorite topic, 'cause I won't be able to talk about it forever. It'll correct itself eventually, but favorite topic is always bond laddering, at least while it still exists. All right, so we're going into our new year. Trustee company has sent over a bunch of the breakdowns. Let's see what we got. Oh, this one looks good. All right. Nice. Looks like a lot of the trust families are doing really, really well. This was left on my desk last night, so I'm actually getting my first look at it as well. Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. Super cool. All right, yeah, it looks like they're doing really, really, really well. So our 20-year clients that got in and got 20-year ladders, they typically came on board with the full ladder being 20 years in 2023. The 2024 ladders, some were shorter, some were longer, actually. There were some 30 years and all of that. But the 2023 folks are on it. So all of the generational wealth folks, which means that they're reinvesting. The standard model back then was an 80% DRIP, which DRIP means dividend reinvestment plan. So that means that 80% of all the money you make, you reinvest in more aggressive markets. And then 20% was retained for liquidity and like trust operations and stuff like that. And so it's interesting. It was they went in at about $75,000. Let's see. Year one income, they came out of it about 838,000 Kenyan shillings. And then they're projected out to year five with the compounding. They're projected out to 12 million at year five, 19 million at year 15, and at the 20-year mark, they're projected out at 30 million. It's outstanding. Outstanding. And so the average yield of the coupons that they're working with in that group is 10%. Right? So they're working with a 10% average yield, 7, 12, 19, 30. So it's looking good for those guys. Let's see. Looking good. Yeah, man. Our 10-year tipping point folks, let's see where they're at. Yes. So 2024, a lot of those folks are 10-year tipping point folks. And so, let's see. They're really working in phases, and really all of the bond ladders work in the same phase. There's like a boring phase, there's a crossover phase, and then there's the doubling, right? That's essentially how they all work. And so the boring phase is where you're just reinvesting your coupon dividends, right? So coupons are what bond dividends are called. So had it been a stock, it'd be called a dividend. Because it's a bond, it's called a coupon. That's essentially all that is. Now, let's see. The folks who have been on the 2004 journey, in year five, they recover the initial capital, right? So at year five, they'll have about 5.4 million shillings in the bond ladder that they've made from the coupon payments. At year seven is their doubling. So at year seven, they'll be at 10.3 million, all passive. And year 15 is their rocket. So at year 15, they'll have 38 million. Again, passive, all through their bond ladder. So it's looking good for everyone who's in. All the new folks who just came in, especially with the end of year special. Of course, they don't have anything yet because they just came in, so they'll get their first projections at the end of the year. But it's looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. Well, these guys are one-offs. So, people, well, actually, people ask about the one-off stuff all the time. So, I guess I can kind of actually get into this. What did they do? Oh, okay. Um, so we had one client that did a $10,000 one-off, just a $10,000 one-off investment, and then they are looking at 10%, but they actually got more than 10%. But they had a 10% target as well, and no additions. So no additions are the people who they say, hey, listen, I'm going to do a generational wealth trust fund. I'm going to throw X amount of dollars in the generational wealth trust fund, and I'm going to walk away and I don't even want to hear about it. Like, that's the end of it. I did what I was going to do. A lot of grandparents do that, right? They're like, look, I'm not maintaining anything. I'm not doing any of that. I got a grandbaby. I got limited time left on this world. Here's X amount of dollars. Let it compound for the grandbaby. Set it up however it needs to be set up. I'm done with it, right? And so those are like one-offs. And so this particular one-off, they did 10 grand as a one-off. Um, they targeted a 10% annual return. There are no additions. And so 20 years later, they're gonna be looking at $67,000, right? So 10 grand, 67, 20 years later, not a huge jump. The interesting thing with that though is that they used a relatively small amount of money with no additions, and a relatively small amount of time. Remember, compounding is about time, right? So oddly enough, even though it's only 67 in 20 years, $67,000 in 20 years, if it pushed to 30 years, it would be like 300,000. And then if you push it to 40 years, you get pretty damn close to a million, right? So the longer it stays, the closer it gets to its explosion point. But that was a one-off. Another client, same situation, same amount of money, but they got an 80% drip, right? So their trust is taking 80% of the coupon payments. And instead of letting it sit in the bank account, which is what that other person was doing, they're reinvesting 80% of it. And so let's see. In the same 20 years with the 80% reinvestment, they're looking at 182,000. See the difference? So from 67,000 to 182,000, just like that. Now again, same 10%, 80% reinvestment. 20 years, still a short amount of time, but they're not bound. They're not bond laddering. They're just doing a 20% reinvestment, right? Like their initial investment isn't even enough to bond ladder. We don't really do this anymore, but we do have some old clients. I guess this is one of them. Yeah, okay. I guess this is one of them. We used to do like the small monthly payments thing. We don't do it anymore because it complicates your situation with the IRS if you're an American, number one. Um, and number two, if you screw up, you mess up your entire program. And the whole point is to make this as easy as possible where you can't F it up, right? And so if we're depending on, that client to make these, this one was $300 a month. And they had done this so long ago that their best rate of return was actually 9%. But they were looking at a 300 a month. They were looking at 9% target. 25 years, they would contribute 90,000, but the ending value would be 330,000. Right, so that shows you what the power of those payments look like. But you can do the payments with the bond ladder, because the bond ladder is going to pay monthly and it's going to pay more than $300 a month. So the bond ladder, if you bond ladder out your generational wealth trust, then you're looking at like a half a million with a 20-year bond ladder. So pretty solid. Let's see what else we got here. Oh yeah, these guys. How are they doing? All right, so these guys they did a generation skip. They invested 25,000. They're getting a 12% return. There's no distributions for 30 years. It's for the grandkids. And that 25,000 that they threw in at that 12% return on a 30-year bond. The value of that at the end of the 30 years is 750,000, right? And that's a set amount because the treasury bonds have a set amount that they're paying out, right? So that's a set amount, and then they don't have any reinvestment, right? Hey, what's going on? Momo, nice to see you in Texas, right? So they don't actually have a set reinvestment, so they don't have a drip or anything like that, right? They just wanted to have $750,000 for the grandkids, and so that's what they did. So good stuff there. They're right on track. There's really not much, for them to not be on track with. The government would have to default on the bonds for them not to make their money. So they have a guaranteed amount of money that's going to be sitting there for the grandkids in 30 years. Yeah, they're doing real good. So see the difference? See the difference with like the starting amounts and the time? So the person who's reinvesting 80%, but they only started with 10,000, there's only $187,000 in there at the end of the 20 years. Whereas a person who invested 25,000 and they're not reinvesting anything, at the end of 30 years, there's $750,000. That's why a lot of people are like, what? Why are people taking loans to do this? Why are people, taking HELOCs to do this? Why are people, leveraging, debt and credit to do this? And that's the reason. The difference is so dramatic depending on your starting amount that it doesn't make sense not to increase your starting amount if you have the ability to do so. Let's see. Got someone with an incomplete ladder. So they did 50,000 in bonds. Their average yield is about 11%. They're reinvesting 80% annually, but it's 20 years. So they're trying to set it up for their kids instead of their grandkids. So that's going to make it smaller right off the bat. Let's see. So it's like 333,000. So a little over a quarter million at the end of the 20 years. Yeah, I remember this guy. So this guy, he's almost running a parallel of his like 401k. So he's going to retire here, but he's still in the United States. He's doing all his paperwork and all of that from the United States, and trying to earn permanent residence, I believe it was, if not dual citizenship and all that stuff, and then be ready at retirement. So he did $10,000. He has a 10% rate of return. He's 30. He was 30 when he started. He's going to end at 60, and so he's going to have about 175,000 in there at 60 when he finishes. And there's no reinvestment on that. He's not. It's just letting that one payment compound. So that was like a tax return for him. It's like you took one tax return and let it compound, and it's going to go from $10,000 to $175,000. Oh, this is a good one, yeah. So this is a family trust. These guys set up a family trust. They actually have a trust estate. So No, that's not the way it works. You pay the penalty in the next tax year. So you just have to be strategic about when you do it, and then you'll have an entire year. Well, actually, have more than a year, obviously, because taxes aren't due the 1st of January. So you could have a year and 2, 3 months to actually see what the returns are, and then you'd be assessed a penalty on that um, next tax filing. So you'd actually be able to see what the returns were in advance. DNA results for Benin citizenship. Gotcha. Yeah, they do the DNA results thing. Does it have to be African ancestry, or can it be any DNA results? Yeah, it depends on how you're going to use it, right? So if you're going to use it to live off of, which a lot of our relocatees do, right? So they'll relocate here, they'll set up a bond ladder, they'll live off the bond ladder. Well, you're not investing anything at that point, then, right? Unless you have obviously overflow in what you're spending to live, that's fine. And then you're choosing like what investments you want to personally invest in with that overflow. That's fine. But if you're using it to cover your monthly income in a passive manner, then you're just using the money so that you don't have to work for 10 years or possibly even 20 years, right? So that's one thing. But if you're doing generational wealth, excuse me, that's a whole different ballgame because you don't actually have to use the money at all, right? You can have that money come in and be reinvested at whatever percentage you want. You can do a 50% drip, you can do an 80% drip, you can do a 100% drip, right? So you can do whatever percentage of reinvestment that you want to do, and then let that money compound, over time, right? So that money is going to grow and grow and grow because you're not spending it right away. So two different um, two different strategies. We had to prove African. Yeah, but do you have to use the company African ancestry? 'Cause I know with some of I'm trying to think who it was. I think Senegal, they offer the same thing, but they only accept the test of one. It's actually a black-owned DNA company in the United States, so they won't accept like Ancestry.com or 23andMe. They only accept African ancestry tests. Step two is to come to Kenya. Very cool. Okay. Right. Got you. Got you. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess for the haplogroup test that the African ancestry company uses, I guess it does make more sense because it lets you know what ethnic group you come from, not what region. So like a lot of the other tests will be like, oh, you're 10% West African, 2% Nigerian, 6% Cameroonian, and blah 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 blah. Whereas when your ancestors, were still on the continent, like those places didn't exist. The Berlin Conference didn't happen yet. There was no Nigeria. There was no Cameroon. There was no Togo, right? And so the haplogroup test will say you have the same ethnic markers as the Fulani tribe. You have the same ethnic markers as the Igbo. You have the same, and so it actually gives you like, an ethnic result versus a fake nation that was created by European colonialism. So it makes more sense to say, okay, well, if the Balanta tribe is in Benin and you have ethnic markers that match the Balanta tribe, then we're okay giving you Benin citizenship, essentially. Yeah, yeah, yeah. A lot of them do that. I'm not sure though, unless it's new. I don't think African ancestry does that as far as linking people because I remember one of their things was in the early days of them advertising, Ancestry.com got a black man falsely imprisoned because they were sharing the DNA data with police and they mixed up the DNA results. So there was some kind of crime or some kind of, I don't know if it was a grape or murder or whatever it was. There was some kind of thing that happened, and Ancestry.com gave police access to their database. And this black man was arrested for it, and it had nothing to do with him. It was their fault completely. So then AfricanAncestry.com started advertising like, we destroy it. We don't connect you with nobody. We don't keep the DNA afterwards. We do not let, even if they got a warrant, they can't get the DNA in our database because we destroy it all. So I'm not sure if they do the connection thing in that regard, just as a matter of safety, or if they've gone back on that and now they're starting to like keep it and connect people. But I know that was their concern about doing that. They didn't want law enforcement to have access to their database. Yeah, 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 yeah. All right, sounds good. Sounds good. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely decent technology. So enjoy that. Yeah, yeah, makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I hope you document your journey. That'll be a lot of fun for a lot of people. Trying to think. There's another group that they're going somewhere in the Sahel region. I don't think it's Benin though, but they're going somewhere over there because the rules in that place, or at least the rules with the citizenship that they're being offered, is that you can't have any other continental citizenship when you make the application. And so they're making the application for that before they have Kenyan citizenship. And it's a weird kind of hybrid citizenship, but I think it's you got to go for about 3 years, at least 1 week a year, and then you get the passport, but you never get the right to vote. So it's like a weird, like second class citizenship, at least for the first generation. But then I would assume if you had kids, they would be full citizens and be able to do whatever. And I assume if you don't have the right to vote, like you can't run for office either. So there's a weird kind of second class citizenship being offered, but you're not allowed to have any other African citizenship. And then I'm assuming the next generation are full citizens. But because it's only 3 years, um, they'll get it like 1 year before they get this citizenship. So it'll work out for them. No, it's speculation. So when we do passport portfolios, there are certain passports that are investments, and there are certain passports that are speculation. So like Sahil passports are definitely speculation at this point. We don't know whether they're going to be powerful passports in the future. We don't know whether there's going to be any economic reason to have them or any generational wealth reason to have them. It's a speculative passport to add to the portfolio. Yeah, yeah, it might end up being a powerhouse, and then it might not. Not necessarily. We've been doing this for a while, so we've seen, Turkey and Istanbul and all of that stuff. Like we've seen governments actually change. So you could have a passport to a country that doesn't exist anymore. It happens. Countries, they do change names. Doesn't happen as much as it used to, but it happens. Yeah, well, it's way more um, common that a passport loses or gains power versus, you know, it not being Turkey anymore and it being Istanbul and then it not being Istanbul anymore and it being Turkey and blah, 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 blah. Mm, there's a lot of factors for which passports would be most at risk for that. But on the face of it, an SAR passport would be most at risk because it's an SAR. So at any point in time, I suppose the SAR can be dissolved and then it would fall back into the host country. So like Hong Kong is an SAR. And so they have their own passport, but they're part of China. They used to be part of the UK, but they have their own passport, right? So their passport's independent. Macau's the same way. Um, Zanzibar is also an SAR, but I don't think Zanzibar folks have their own passport. I think they have a Tanzanian passport. But Monaco has its own passport. So you can have a French passport or a Monaco passport. Um, Trying to think which other SARs are prevalent. There's a bunch of them though. There's a bunch of SARs all over the place. Um, is Karakou an SAR? Hmm. I'm not sure if it's officially an SAR, but it acts like it. Like Karakou people, I don't even know if they have a name, but they have Grenadian passports. Last I checked. So, it's stuff like that. Those kind of regions that are part of other countries, but they have their own passports, those are the ones that are most susceptible to, like, you have the passport, but now the passport's been dissolved. Like, eventually, there probably won't be a Hong Kong passport. China had promised Hong Kong, since it had been colonized by Britain for 100 years, that they would give them 100 years before they changed anything majorly. But when the 100 years is up, which would be what 2099, or 2098 maybe. But once the 100 years is up, it's possible that they'll just eliminate their passport. Like they'll just have to get a Chinese passport, and that's the end of that. So those kinds of things, the SARs are on the face of it the ones with the highest risk of no longer existing. Planning to relocate to Kenya. Awesome. Karibu, Kenya. So moving to Kenya and not having to work anymore is retirement. Um. Oh, you mean like, am I talking about people who retire and then move to Kenya? Is that what you're asking me? Yeah, no, 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 no. The bond ladder investment allows you to, in your relocation, not have to work anymore, based on the investment. So what ends up happening is when people purchase a bond ladder, the bond ladder kicks out like a minimum of 50,000 Kenyan shillings a month. Now, like the folks who are like buying like the end of year special relocation package, they already have a house, they already have their land, they already have their permit, they already have everything wrapped up in the one bundle, right? So because they already have that, they don't have to pay rent, they don't have to pay a water bill, they don't have to pay property taxes because the particular land that's available is agricultural land. They don't have to, deal with any of that stuff. It's very easy for them to have a 50,000 Kenyan shilling a month budget, right? We've had some folks come in, bigger families, they needed more, so they just increased the bond ladder, right? So they can increase it, they can double it, and get 100,000 a month, and so they'll have those payments coming to them for like the next 10 years minimum, right? Folks that were part of the last bond ladder, they actually have 20 years, right? We were, illustrating that last week or whatever, showing the reports on that bond ladder. But the minimum is 50,000 a month and 10 years, right? So I mean, we got folks that are coming over. They're like 38. They just don't have to work anymore, right? Because they got the bond ladder. So the bond ladder is taking care of all of that for them. Now, there are some folks that will continue working and they'll compound that money, right? So compounding means they'll reinvest it and grow it and grow it and grow it. So instead of just not working for 10 years, maybe they keep working for 10 years and then never have to work anymore, right? So it just depends on how they want to, execute. Why not just get it? Because you can't work in someone else's country without a work permit. It's illegal. You can't just go into someone else's country and start taking their resources. A lot of folks are in that mindset though, but because they're looking for dual citizenship, so they know they can't work for the first 7 years. Obviously, being in a position where you get passive income for the first 10 years and don't have to work, sets you up so that if you're looking to work later, you work as a citizen. You wait till you get your dual citizenship and you have your Kenyan passport, and then you work from there. Interested in that end of year special? There's actually only one plot left. So if you are like seriously interested in that particular end of year special, you'll wanna book a consultation now, right? So you want to go to the link in the bio and book the consultation for as soon as possible, so that thing doesn't sell out. We started with 12, we're down to one, and we started the special, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, not even 2 weeks ago. So we expected to sell out at the end of January, but sold out super fast. Now, some folks that are doing generational wealth, trust funds, and all of that, they don't need the end of year special. They just need the bond ladder. That's always available. But as far as getting the house built and owning the land and all of the things that come in the end of year special, there's only one left. So it's just like, so all immigration is essentially the same. And the mandate of all immigration departments is to protect citizens from foreigners taking their resources, as far as labor resources and economic resources and economic opportunity, right? So you can't walk into any country and just start working unless there's a treaty between your two countries, right? But you can't just walk into a country and just start taking jobs from the local people, especially if you can work for less. That ends up being the issue, is that if you'll work for minimum wage and the locals won't work for minimum wage, now it's a situation where all the locals are out of work if they allow foreigners to just come in and take jobs. So you typically always need a work permit. Here, a work permit is issued by the company that hires you, and you can't own the company. That's a scam. So so it has to be the company that hires you that issues you a work permit. In order to own a company, you need an investor permit, right? Which in my opinion is higher than a work permit. So it wouldn't even make sense to get an investor permit and then pay the same amount of money and try to give yourself a work permit, right? So there's that. Nomad, you can get a nomad permit. It just doesn't leave the citizenship. So it's like a throwaway permit unless you're a real nomad. Then it's valuable because if you're a real nomad, you're not trying to stay here. You're nomadic. So you're going to come here for a year or two, and then you're going to go to Thailand for a year or two, and then you're going to go to Egypt for a year or two because you're a nomad. A lot of people are kind of mixing that up, and they're using a nomad permit to stay here permanently, and then it's like they waste 7 years because they get to the end of the 7 years and they can't get dual citizenship. So do the nomad if you're a nomad. If you're not planning on relocating here, then do the nomad. So if it's temporary and you're an expat, right? And so if you're an expat, you're living in the country temporarily, do digital nomad. It's fine because that's what you are. But if you're not, if you're an immigrant like me and you're not trying to live there temporarily, you're moving there, then a nomad is just wasting your time. Citizenship requires a Class K residency permit or a spousal pass. So if you get married, you stay married for 7 years. You can get citizenship through marriage. We typically don't recommend that because you can get to 6 years and get divorced, and you just wasted all 6 of those years. There's no way to recover them. So we have married people who are married to locals, but they still got their citizenship through their permit, right? I'm one of them. I'm married. I've been married long enough to get my citizenship through the marriage, but I had a permit, right? So that my time was protected. But it's the same amount of time. It's either you're married for 7 years or you're a ordinary resident Class K permit holder for 7 years. And that's a direct pathway to dual citizenship. You don't have to pick dual citizenship. You could give up, you could give up foreign citizenship or just not have it recognized, you know. So from the Kenyan government perspective, they wouldn't, treat you as a dual citizen. Um, but it's just an application. You just apply for the citizenship you want. So you can apply for dual citizenship, which 100% of our clients do, or you could apply for citizenship. Now, a lot of folks that maybe try to do it on their own, like maybe they'll have a firm like ours get them in, and then they think, oh, well, now we're in, I'm gonna do it on my own. Those folks mess up their citizen application every single time, 100% of the time. They screw up their citizenship application, and then sometimes they lose it in the end because they'll be asked, have you renounced? And then they'll answer no, but they didn't ask for dual citizenship. So now their request for citizenship is a fraudulent conveyance because the type of citizenship that they asked for, they said they would renounce all other citizenship because they didn't know what the hell they were doing. And so people will try to save $1 and try to go through the process on their own and end up getting permanently banned from the country after spending 7 years, having bank accounts, buying properties, building houses. That's when they decide to cut off their nose and spite their face. And it sucks. So definitely use a professional. Get through the process professionally. Nope, nothing my law firm can do for them. We get the phone calls, though. That's how we know they do it. We get the frantic phone calls. My bank account is seized. I have kids here. Da, 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 da. They're going to deport me. Yep, that's exactly what's going to happen because you wanted to save a buck and you didn't know what you were doing. Nothing, absolutely nothing we could do for. Other law firms will take their money. Other law firms will tell them there's something they can do and take their money because what's going to happen? They're going to get deported. What are you going to do? Sue me from America? Like, so there's a lot of law firms that'll pick up the phone and just take their money, but we just tell them the truth, and too late. Too late. Oh, all the time, all the time. I don't know. It's a cultural thing, unfortunately, because it's the same group of people that do it every time. Other groups of people, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's upbringing. I don't know what it is. But other groups of people get it. They get their professionals in line and they make sure that everything happens right. But for some reason, uh, there's a lot of people that'll they'll get in and then they got this do it yourself or get it out the mud or I don't know what it is, but there's this weird mentality where they try to start doing everything themselves and think it's cheaper, and it ends up costing 3 times more and sometimes gets them kicked out of the country. So it's I don't know, it's weird. So just always use a professional. Always, always, always. You're in a different country where you don't know the laws, you don't know the culture, you don't know the characteristics. And that's not just Kenya, right? Always use a professional. We only onboard in Kenya, but once we've onboarded, we meet what's called a KYC criteria for the client. So we can then go ahead and expand that client into other territories. So we have set people up in like Sierra Leone after they've onboarded in Kenya. We've set people up in like SADC states and stuff like that. So we've seen people go into other states and then pull the same nonsense and have the same results. So, and not even all African countries. We've expanded people into China. We've expanded people into Singapore and so on and so forth. So it's not about the specific country. It's about the fact that you're not from there. You just don't know how things work, and you don't know how the laws work. You don't know how much representation like you're allowed. Like the difference between British representation and American representation is like night and day, right? Like an American lawyer can sit in an interrogation with you and be like, "Don't answer that." A British lawyer can't. Like you got to answer while the lawyer is sitting there. Like they're completely different governments, and those governments are like outstandingly similar, right? So they're like the closest governments that you could probably find. And when you find yourself in a situation, your rights in that situation are absurdly different, right? So that becomes part of the problem of that people just don't know. You're just not from that culture. And for Americans, like they should understand that the most, because from state to state, you don't know what the hell is going on. So what makes you think you're gonna go across the ocean and act like you know what's going on? I remember the first time I drove up to New York, there was like a cop pulled me over for blowing my horn. Like I was like boop boop, and they were like, "You're not allowed to blow your horn." Why do New York cars have a horn then? Like, what do you mean? And there was a sign. Like, he pointed at the sign. You see, I had a Pennsylvania license plate, so he let me go. But, like, he pointed at the sign, like $500 fine or something like that for blowing your horn, right? So, from one state to the next, you don't know what the heck is going on. What would make you think you could fly to Greece and know what's going on, or go to Kenya and know what's going on, or go to Hong Kong and know what's going on, right? So, just, use some common sense. Don't get yourself jammed up for no reason. Yeah, no, I wouldn't. You're right though. It is cool that I have the law firm, or else I wouldn't know about it at all. Because why would they call me when things go wrong if I didn't have the law firm? So yeah, that definitely lets me see the whole picture. Where a lot of like relocation consultants or like people who are not vertically integrated and all they do is take a check and drop somebody off over here and walk away from them. They don't know what happens after that. Whereas for us, when something bad happens, we got people who will call the law firm and want to sue or need to get out of this situation or X, Y, and Z. Yeah, it definitely gives me a better picture of the pitfalls. A lot of them are so avoidable, though. You know what I mean? It's so weird. Where am I from? I'm from Philadelphia. Hmm, that's interesting. No, I think it's just a mentality, right? So your mentality with regard to economics, essentially. So like you'll have different buyer profiles, and you can niche them down and into minutia. But in general, you'll have a price buyer and a value buyer. If you are a buyer, you should stay in your country always. If you're a price buyer, you're going to jam yourself up always, right? So if your criteria is what is the cheapest thing I can get, who is the cheapest service provider I can use, what is the cheapest price, if that's your criteria, that might work where you live. Probably not, but you might think it does. And you should stay there because at least you know the ramifications of what you're putting yourself into. Because essentially, you get to a point where you get exactly what you pay for, right? So if you've developed the mentality of I am always going to get the least, then you are always going to get the least, right? That is not helpful when you are moving across the world. When you're moving across the world, you need a value buyer mentality. You need to get the most value available in the marketplace at the most appropriate price, right? So those are the folks that succeed. Those are the only folks we personally do business with. If we get a hint that somebody's a price buyer, we'll just deny, the onboarding, which we do quite often. So we only work with our perfect fits. That's us. That's because we're specialists and because we specialize in bond laddering, right? So, if you think I'm providing bond ladders for you guys and you guys ain't got to work anymore and we ain't got no bond ladders, you're out of your mind, right? So our company has bond ladders, our trust funds have bond ladders, we have individual bond ladders, which means we don't need business. We get a check every month, multiple checks from the government, and we're going to get those checks for 30 years, right? So it puts us in a position where we can tell people like, nope, you're not. We're not the right match for you. You're not the right client for us. We're not the right service provider for you. And if we know where to send them, then we send them there. If we don't know where to send them, we just not right for you. You got to find somebody else. So we don't do anything with like neo-colonial mentalities. We don't do anything with like price buyer mentalities. Like people who are setting themselves up for failure, we kind of stay away from them. How is it here? It's great. Yeah, it's great. So yeah, it's more that. In my professional opinion, that's what I've seen over the years. Because the same types of people are successful over and over and over again, and the same types of people fail over and over and over again. So we've never seen a price buyer succeed in a relocation. Never. So why would we identify that you're a price buyer and then take your money knowing that the odds of you failing are like 99%? And that's being nice since for us, in our history, it's been 100%. So why would we take your money knowing that you're setting yourself up for failure? It doesn't make sense to us. Now, a generalist or somebody who's struggling and they need every penny they can get, they might just take your money and tell you it's a good idea, But we're not in the practice of doing that. It's tough, and we don't do it. It's changing your mentality is a tough situation. Number one, you got to choose to do it. It's not easy because you've surrounded yourself with a bunch of reinforcement, right? So what ends up happening is like I tell people all the time: if you think you can't do it and you think you can, you're right. Because you'll have reinforcement for either position. So if you think it's impossible, you can find every excuse in the world as to why it's not impossible. If you think it is possible, you will see every opportunity in the world to make it possible. And both people will be absolutely correct. The person who thinks it's impossible, it'll be impossible for them. The person who thinks they can do it, they will absolutely do it. Right? And it just is what it is. So if that's where they're at, it's not easy. They have to decide typically. There typically has to be some kind of extraordinary changing force, what addicts call rock bottom. So they got to hit their rock bottom in the mentality, and they have to decide there's a better way and then pursue that better way. But that's not something we do. Like we're not. That's like an ebook coach thing, And I don't know which one is the one to go to for that, So But yeah, mentality change is very, very, very difficult. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That's why it sucks when I see it with families that have kids and stuff, because like damn near those kids are doomed. You know, some of them will break away, some of them will choose. I never want to be anything like my mama, which is sad in and of itself, right? And then those folks will typically be like labeled the black sheep or whatever. But overall, those kids are screwed. You know, and it crosses all, all ethnic groups and all cultures and all of that. Same thing you see in the hood is the same thing you see in the trailer park. You know, so that mentality gets perpetuated across generations, and it sucks. That's why with our generational wealth clients, the number one thing is the family constitution. The number one thing is getting that going, where there's an educational program designed for the family to make sure that the family has the tools it needs to succeed in the future. It's the number one most important thing. And the conflict resolution article of that Constitution is the most important part of the Constitution, right? Bar none. Nothing even comes close to being as important as the conflict resolution section of the Family Constitution. So yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult. I'm not sure that's true, and it's because you asked the question, right? Most of the people with mentalities that are self-defeating don't ask questions about the mentality. So the people who ask about improving themselves are typically not as bad as they think they are. It's kind of like, have you ever heard them say, like, if you think you might be going crazy, you're not crazy. Like, crazy people don't know they're crazy. It's that type of thing. You know, if you're really in that kind of like bad mentality, all you'll see is excuses all day long. So it'll never even dawn on you that you might have a solution. It'll never even dawn on you that there might be a way to improve, your circumstance. People like that. Oh, I bet they're a joy to be around. Yeah, yeah. I was born in the project housing, and then we then we got out the project housing directly into the hood, right? So we left the projects and went to the worst part of the city. It was actually less safe in that part of the city outside the projects than it was in the projects, because if you got caught doing anything crazy in the projects, they kicked you out of the projects. And in the projects, you might have been on Section 8. You might have been $10 a month rent, right? Now you get out the projects, you go get a place in the city, you got a mortgage now, or you got real rent that you got to pay, and the bangers are there, doing their craziness. So it was actually a lifestyle downgrade to get out of the projects into the hood, and so I had my fair share of being surrounded by people that were self-defeating and thought it was everybody else's fault when it was completely their fault. I remember, man, I remember this kid. His name was Julian. He stuttered. Um, and Julian would always talk about getting robbed all the time. People always stealing from me. I don't know why people always stealing from me. You hang out with thieves. All your friends are thieves. Whether you're a thief or not, every last one of your friends are thieves. That's who you hang out with. You lay down with dogs, you get up with fleas. And he couldn't see that, like, he hung around the wrong people. He had thieves around him all the time, and that's why his stuff was constantly getting stolen, right? So it's one of those things where the fact that you asked the question, I think, is in direct contradiction with you thinking that your mentality is that bad. There's probably room for improvement. Most people, I don't think any of us are perfect. We can all improve, but I don't think you're as bad as you think you are. or you would have never asked the question. Hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it came out of a desire to be able to help, right? And so for us to be able to bring people over as smoothly as we do and them have no issues in the relocation and all of that, that was definitely the primary desire. Once we got to a place where we could bond ladder, we didn't need clients, right? So, if the bond ladder is bringing in 2 million a year, um, that's 2 million a year passive, right? And if the company has its own bond ladder getting 2 million, and the company passive, the family trust has its own bond ladder getting 2 million passive in the trust. If each individual member have their own bond ladders, they're each getting a million or two individually. Like it just gets to a point where it's like, but it does allow us to operate at a high level, which allows us to maintain extraordinary service, and it allows us to pick and choose who we work with. So that's kind of for me as a service provider. I mean, if you're if you're a product manufacturer or something like that, then maybe it's a little bit different, right? Then you can still bond ladder your business out, but then maybe you're still trying to sell your product to as many people as you can, but you offset the costs, or you pay bonuses to your employees, or you whatever. It's a little bit different. But as a service provider and then a specialist at that, you want to pick your people. It's the same thing that doctors do. If you're the world's best oncologist and you're a specialist in oncology, like not every patient who has cancer can get to you. Like you pick and choose your patients, and you can only see so many people a year because you're a specialist, right? So when you become a specialist, that's what happens. And so the bond laddering helped us get to that level for sure, for sure. And a lot of so we had a guy who was struggling to be a voice actor. He got the bond ladder, right? And he paid a lot more because the special wasn't available back then. So he like bought a house outright, bought a car outright, bought the land outright, no specials, and then bought a bond ladder, right? So he more than double what you guys have paid for it. The 11 of you guys who have already onboarded, and whoever gets this last one, more than double what you guys paid for it. He now approaches the voice acting as though he's freaking Denzel Washington, because he don't need the money anymore, and the jobs that flow in because of the confidence that he now exudes when he goes to these like casting calls and all that. Like, F you, I don't care if you give me the job or not, this is what I do, and I'm going to do it the way I do it because I feel like doing it that way, and you can take it or leave it. That's how he approaches it now. And these casting directors are like, yeah, and like he's controlling the entire negotiations. He's controlling how much money he gets. It's like a different world for him because he doesn't need the money anymore. He's not meek and timid. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of it. Oh, what's the starting rate? That's gone. That's out the window because he doesn't need it to feed his family anymore, right? So your world changes when you got a check coming in every month that's guaranteed, and it covers everything. Right, so that's the real kind of pro to the bond laddering. Can you try to get it little by little over time? You can try, but it's going to correct itself eventually. The only reason why bond laddering is valid in this situation is that the interest rates are extreme right now, right? So, for example, last year's tranches, tranche two, which was the February tranche, right? You need six to get a full bond ladder. So there's six tranches. Tranche two, or tranche B, was 18.46%. It was 18.4607%, right? It's a historical fact. You can go look it up. So everybody who bought that, they're guaranteed almost 20% return on investment on a freaking bond where they cannot lose money, right? And so That's unheard of, right? And so that's almost double the S&P 500 on a freaking bond, right? So that's not going to last forever. So you can try to do that, but odds are, while you're in the middle of trying to do that, the bonds are going to correct, and then they're going to drop down to 7-8%, which is not going to give you enough money to execute at this level. And so you're going to be half in, half out, with no way to make up the difference. So that's the only problem, and that's why we even cut off this special in February, because we couldn't guarantee that we would fill out or finish the bond ladder in time if you onboarded past February, right? Because nobody knows what's going to happen with the interest rates. We're hoping that they'll stay fairly high until 2027, because that's an election year. So we're hoping that the government won't allow the Treasury to go down too low just to keep the incumbent president looking good. But that's speculation. There's nobody knows. So it's up to you. You know what I mean? Do whatever it is that works for you. But this inching along is not, in my opinion, it's not the smart money. You want to get it done. You want to get it done before the interest rates drop. You don't have to you don't have to do it with us either. You know what I mean? You can do it with that whatever brokers you choose is going to be broker fees. So it's gonna be a different situation. You're probably going to pay a lot more, but you don't have to do it through us. You can do it through whoever you want, but you want to get it done. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's true. Most times, people talking to us, it's not. Like, people will say they don't have the money, and then like the folks who want to do it, they see opportunity, and the folks who don't, they see excuse, and then that ends up being that. Because think about it, if you could get 18.46%, right, on a treasury bond, okay, what's the penalty for removing money from your 401k? It's 10% the year after you remove it. So if you get 18.46% and you're getting that for the next 10 years, and you have a one-time penalty of 10%, does it make sense to pull that money out of the 401k that you're getting 10% a year on, that's following the S&P 500, number one? So you're getting 10% a year on that 401k, number one. And you have a one-time 10% penalty on the amount you've taken out, but you've taken out that amount to get 18.4607% for the next 10 years. Does it make sense? Right? So it's a mentality thing. Nah, I mean, and stuff like this, we don't like to like convince people of anything. You know what I mean? Like, you're gonna do your own due diligence. You're gonna make up your own mind. We'll facilitate it if you want to facilitate it. If not, then not. Right? Simply because it's not a good look to have somebody coming, back 5 years later talking about, you know, I didn't want to do X, Y, and Z, and you told me that. No, we're not doing that. We're not playing that game with anybody. So if they get it and they want to move forward, cool. If not, cool. Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot of people that are like, I don't know if insecure is the right word or what, but they never make a decision, right? And they go to people to make decisions for them. And then it's almost like a safety net. Like, even if the decision is working out, they complain about the person who, well, I didn't want to do that. They told me to do it. Nah, 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 even if it's working well for them. And so that's a weird kind of mentality of person, and we typically disqualify them. If we identify that that's who we're dealing with, then we'll typically just walk away from that deal. I hear you. I hear you. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. And you're already here, so it's easier for you, right? Like you don't need all the bundles. It's cheaper for you too because you don't need the immigration. You don't need all of that stuff. You're already, in Kenya. So yeah, it's way cheaper for you to get that ladder going. The price isn't just the ladder. For the guys on the outside looking in, the price isn't just the ladder. The price is like being legally allowed to have the ladder, right? Like getting your equivalent of a social security number, getting a central bank account with the actual treasury department, right? Not an account that you can actually transact in. You need a special account with the central bank and the government so that you can buy, treasuries. Setting up your immigration status if need be, setting up your trust fund if need be to manage the whole thing and all that. Like all of those setup costs are part of people who initiate, bond laddering. But the next ladder, and typically people do get an additional ladder. The next ladder is way cheaper because all of that's already set up. You don't pay the fees to set everything up. That's already set up again, right? So all your setup fees are gone, right? And so then people who are getting additional ladders, it's always way cheaper than the initial one. Jomo, which Jomo is that? Is that the Jomo I think it is? You let me know. Hey, what's going on, man? Yeah. How are things? Good. When's he coming back? Can I talk about that? Are you cool with me breaking down a high level overview of what you got going on? Okay, cool. So Jomo is a Kenyan that has lived in America for years, like over a decade, right? And has kids and all of that. And so 18 years, has lived in America for 18 years. So he has kids in America and all of that. Um, Matters of succession can get ugly in Kenya, right? So he has land here, he has all of that stuff going on. But when he passes, which is an inevitable, right? When he passes, succession issues can get ugly to the point where like people try to take people out, right? Like it can get stupid. And most like American kids of Kenyans just like whatever, I don't care. I don't even be in Kenya like that. You know, I'm just gonna let it go. And so, what a lot of our Kenyan clients do that are overseas, like Jomo, is they'll set up a trust fund with us and they'll put all their stuff in the trust fund, right? So now, when they pass, ain't no succession. Ain't no family members popping up out the blue talking about no. This should go to me because I'm here. Are they even really Kenyan? They're American. All that stuff is out the window. The trust already owns everything, right? And so then what happened? Um, yeah. And then what happened was there was a school, shooting in the area. And so he was like, you know what, F this. And so the trust then acted with guardianship. And now his son, that's why he said his son is coming back in a week. His son's coming back in a week because school starts back up in a week, right? So his son now goes to the number one, like, top boarding school in the country. It's like Harvard. It's beautiful. And the trust handles everything. The trust pays the tuition. The trust has a driver. The trust handles the estate. So there's a house with maids and all of that. And the trust is paying for all of that, right? Um, and so that's what a lot of our actual Kenyan clients that are living in the diaspora. A lot of them come to us for those services. So they also need the trust services just to secure their assets out here, and then they're able to send their kids to better schools that might even be available in the United States, but definitely safer. Right? They ain't worried about getting a phone call that some crazy man walked into school and their child isn't alive anymore. So there's a lot of stuff like that going on. Thanks for letting me tell that story, Jomo. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Sure thing. Yeah, I'll have to see him when he comes through. What grade is he in now? He's almost done, man. Time flies. In 10th grade already. Time flies. Does the bond laddering handle that? It can. I'm not going to speak to his specific, right? Because I don't want people clicking on your profile on that live stream. Can they do that on what are you on Instagram live? Anyway, it's possible. I'm not going to say how his trust fund specifically is financed, but yes, you could have a bond ladder in there, and the bond ladder is paying for all of that. So the bond ladder is paying the school fees, which is the school tuition. The bond ladder is paying for the maid. The bond ladder is paying for food in the house, so on and so forth. So yes, you could definitely do it that way. That's a good question. You can set up the bond ladder to handle anything. The the deciding factor is whether or not you can afford that type of ladder, right? So, oh, happy New Year vibes. So like we had a family of 12, and they have an extreme ladder, right? But that's what they like wanted as far as like monthly checks to come in at. So they're like our base ladder pays like a guaranteed 50,000 a month, right, of local currency. It costs like $75,000, right? Pays a guaranteed 50,000 a month for at least 10 years. Okay, they wanted 5 million a month, right? So they had to buy more bonds to accommodate for that, right? So that's a that's an extreme example, but they had that very large family. They flew over here. It was a 12-member family, but mind you, they brought all of their pets. So they brought all the dogs, like 6 or 7 dogs, 5 cats, iguanas, and like everything. They relocated the entire family. They brought a bunch of containers. There was like 10 shipping containers that they brought with us. So like, we built them an incredible family estate, and all of that stuff. So that's a different situation. But when you'll create the ladder that matches the situation that you have. It wasn't difficult for them to do because they were pooling their resources, right? So it wasn't a difficult thing for them to make that leap. Whereas for an individual who only got 12 other working adults to pool resources with, that would have been crazy expensive, right? But even with it being crazy expensive, when you look at what they got, for them to get like 3 acres and everybody has their own house and there's a private salon and barbershop on the estate and there's an archery range and a basketball court and a tennis court and all these amenities and all of that, they got all of that custom built for less than $2 million. So you think about it. Talk about 12 people, 14 houses or 14 buildings, because there's, the tennis court and all of that. And like the barbershop and all that isn't like a house, there's no beds in there and nothing like that. So they got a bunch of like those things. They have like a meeting hall, which is like I don't know, it's almost like an activity space, you know, That they got an indoor basketball court and an outdoor basketball court. Like, it's the works. This thing would have been $200-300 million in the United States. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where it's still well worth it. But if you're working with a team, the whole family's pooling resources, they're all working together, you can do all kinds of beautiful things. You're absolutely right. I'm happy that you connected those dots. That's the whole point for the generational wealth folks, right? We get a lot of generational wealth folks who are like, hey, we really wish we could do like your relocation stuff, but it's truly impossible for us because of whatever situation, right? But we also now know that we can invest in this generational wealth trust fund, and our kids won't be in the same situation as us. We can guarantee that now. We didn't know it was guaranteed. We didn't know there was a way to guarantee it. Now we know that we can guarantee it over time with just compounding, right? It's never going to help us. It's never going to make our lives better. But we know that over time with compounding, our grandkids are guaranteed X, Y, and Z, right? And then hopefully they have that. And we create a family that doesn't ever have to operate the way our family does, now in the future, where there is pooled power and there are pooled resources, and they are working together to achieve common goals. And so those people are superheroes, and like, we're focused on that this year. For 2026, we're going to do 100 new generational wealth trusts. We've already done 3 in this new year, right? 3 people have already onboarded. So we're doing 100 new generational wealth families because it just makes the biggest impact, especially for the community at large. And so that's going to be our focus this year. And just change the community through generational wealth. Some of those folks might relocate, some of them might not, but they will put their family in a position where they're going to leave them better off, than they found them or than they made them. And so that is a beautiful thing. So we can't wait. We can't wait to keep going. We're actually doing really, really well. So what's been 4 days of the new year? We've already gotten 3 out of the 100 down. So hopefully we get to revise that number up. You can, it's just not as effective. So like 50,000 a month here, after you already have your house and all that. That's why this end of the year special we did included like a house and all of that stuff, right? If you already own your house, you already got that squared away. 50,000 can spend like $10,000 a month here, right? Like, you can do really, really well and be okay with that 50,000. Okay. Now, if you're paying for an apartment and you're paying for taxis all the time and you're like, whatever, that's a whole different thing. The 50,000 might not cut it, right? The average Kenyan doesn't make $50,000 a month though, or 50,000 shillings a month. I'm sorry, right? So there's that. Keep that in mind, right? But the standards of livings might not match, might not be the standard of living that you want to engage in, right? So that's a huge part of it. But now if you like repatriate that, like if you're like, all right, I'm going to do the bond ladder, but I'm going to try to live in the US off of it, you're going to repatriate that 50,000 a month. It's going to end up being like $350 a month. What are you going to do with that? Right? That's why there's no local equivalent of this, right? Because what are you going to do? Put up, $75,000 and then get $300 a month? Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense. But if you do it on the relocation where you're putting up $75,000 and you're essentially getting the buying power of $10,000 a month for putting up $70,000, everything all of a sudden makes sense. See how that works? So you can do it, but it wouldn't be cost effective, in our opinion. Listen, that's crazy. Yeah, that's wild. That's wild. Yeah, a lot of folks, a lot of. I mean, as soon as he got elected, actually, um, I mean, probably 10 times as many people called. Unfortunately, not everybody qualified. Most of them didn't. That's the unfortunate part. And we're just not about setting people up for failure. But yeah, yeah, that madness. I'm sure we're gonna see a spike of people leaving because of what he just did. So we'll see. Sometimes we're not even like following it, and sometimes we see like a spike in people booking consultations and stuff, and then we got to go look and see what he did. So sometimes we don't even know what the newest news is, and then all of a sudden there's a 30% spike in people doing relocation assessments and doing relocation consultations, and then we're like, all right, what did Trump do now? And so yeah, it's pretty wild. Yeah, solo. If you're doing a bond ladder solo and you don't need anything else, then yes. Um, but the end of year special includes immigration. It includes a plot of land by the beach here in Deani. It includes a 1,600 square foot house, 2 bedroom, possibly 3 bedroom house on that piece of land. It includes the trust fund and it includes the bond ladders, right? Um, so coming into all of that, it's like 185. Right. It's less than the price of the house, and you get the house plus everything else, right? That's what makes it a special. How can we do it? If you go back and you look at our account, you'll see we spent a little over a month in China a few months ago. So we renegotiated all our supply contracts, and so that was very helpful in us being able to build the house. That now it's a specific house because we had already pre-negotiated all the material costs in that house. So it's a specific house style, but having that really allowed us to do this special now. So yeah, yeah. Had it had we not gone back and renegotiate things, we wouldn't. It'd be impossible. We wouldn't even be able to offer that price point, especially for. It's a 2 bedroom with an office that's the same size as a master bedroom that has its own bathroom, right? So if you don't want the office, it's a 3 bedroom. That's why it's two, possibly three. Right, right. Yeah, the bathroom is also the same size as the master bedroom's bathroom. So yeah, you can have full shower and all of that in there. Right. So that would put the 1 bedroom on the first floor and the other two on the second. I do, but you can't see it because you're on the wrong live stream. Well, wait, maybe you can. Do you have TikTok? If you come over to TikTok, I can put the picture up. TikTok has like a better, like a better green screen. All right, give me a moment to find it here. Excuse me. gallery. I need to start like creating picture galleries that are just for these lives. End up scrolling through my entire phone just to find these pictures. Nope, that's not it. Jeez. There it is. All right. So yeah, if you head over to, oh, okay, you're already here. All right. So on the TikTok side, yeah, you can see that image is now up. So that's what it looks like. Yes, it's a glass. It's a glass wall, and that glass wall will be where the staircase is. Yes, there is a second floor balcony and a first floor veranda. Yeah. Yep. So there's the two bedrooms on the second floor, and then there's an office on the far side of the first floor. Um, that's the exact same size as the master bedroom above it. Yeah, it's a pretty cool build. Pretty cool build. Yeah, it's like 5 minutes drive to the beach, 15-minute walk. There's one. There's one left. They went fast. They went super fast. We didn't think they would go that fast, actually. Yep. So just the house would be more than 185. Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's what makes it like fairly simple, for folks to relocate with us because it's like everything gets wrapped into to one. It's typically the entire value you get is double or triple the price, from wherever you're coming from. So yeah, yeah. All right. It has been. Well, it's only been an hour and a half today. We were able to get through everything as efficiently as possible here. What? Why can't? Oh, because it's on the picture. Um. Oh yeah. No. Yeah. Definitely. You can definitely get things piecemealed. They just cost more. Bundles are always cheaper. The concept is called an economy of scale. So, like for example, with that large family that we built for, all of their bricks are the same. All of their roofing materials are the same. All of their window sizes are the same, right? So when you do stuff like that, we can purchase certain things with economy of scale, which will bring down the overall price, right? If each person needs specific tile and they all have to get different bathroom tile and they all need different, sinks and different faucets and different windows and different doors, and like, if that's what we're doing, then there's no economy of scale discount that's going to lock in for everybody. But if you got a team coming in and like they're cool with everybody's floor being the same color, and then everybody's bathroom tile being the same, everybody having the same faucets, like that can create economy of scale situations where we can go in and get much better pricing. All right. Any other questions from any of the live streams? Yeah, we'll be doing a family constitution workshop. I think in March. So if we do it in March, it'll be like March into April, and then I think we're gonna go to China in April. So like right when we're done with the family constitution workshop, then we'll be back in China. It's possible. It's possible that we'll renegotiate some things and come out of China with another deal. It's possible. All right. So any other questions? Throw a one in the chat if you want me to like wait for you while you're typing out your question, or just press enter, and I'll wait for you to like go back in and correct it, whatever pops up on the screen. Other than that, I'll call it. All right, looks like there's no questions. Thank you very much, guys. Always a pleasure to be with you guys. We will see the Freedom Family again tomorrow, right around the same time, and in the same place. All right, guys. See you then.